Insights of All Trades podcast.
You think you'll ever go back to law school?
I think about it a lot. I do not need legal training to do the job that I have now.
Okay.
Because while a lot of it is legislative, we do have counsel in Harrisburg that work for different committees that are actually writing our bills for us. So we have the idea for the bill. We want this to get done, and we tweak certain things to know what they look like. But they're the ones that actually write it to get it in synthesis with current law, to make it constitutional, all that kind of stuff. And I would never be doing that myself in the job that I have now. So I don't need law school to do what I'm doing. So I think if I went back to law school, it would have to fit into my overall goals of what I want to do.
Okay.
And while law school absolutely informed what I do now, especially because I sit on the Judiciary Committee, and we talk about criminal and civil laws and things that I've learned in the classroom all the time, I don't need it for the job that I have now. And so I don't need it for the legislative job. And then the other half of my job is, again, helping people with different problems that they have with state agencies. So with social services or licensure issues or tax issues, things like that, helping small business with permits, helping people with building permits, things like that. A lot of that stuff, you don't need a law degree either. It's just a matter of making the right connection for someone. And so I have not decided yet. It has to fit into my overall goal of what I want to see. And really the only option I have is to go to Widener at night, which is doable, but I also loved George Mason and didn't want to give that up. So I am not sure. I have a little bit of pride there too.
So this is kind of a tangent, but what's the process like applying to law school, and how do you go about that and do it successfully like you did?
Yeah, so you take the LSATs, which is the law school admission test, and it's a lot of, you can train for that test. So it's your raw score that you get on the first time might be a good indicator of how well you'll do in law school, but it has nothing to do with law school in general. And everything you do in law school, you can train for. So it's a lot of logic games, logical reasoning, reading comprehension. That's what the LSAT is. And like I said, my raw score, the first time I ever took the test, was probably in the bottom 50% of test takers. But by the time I was done, I was in the top 20% of test takers. It's something you can train for over time. You just have to build on it over time. And it's a lot of repetition, a lot of retaking these logic games so you know what they look like. And then you apply. So you don't have to have any kind of political background or anything like that. A lot of English majors in my law school class, a couple econ majors, and actually at George Mason, where I was at, they actually have they're very popular in IT law. So there were a lot of people with tech backgrounds that were in my class, a lot of people with biology backgrounds that they wanted to do things with pharmaceuticals and pharmaceutical IP, which is intellectual property, so it's patents and things like that. So people with huge diversities get into law school, and so you don't have to have the political policy background, even though I did.
So what kind of advice would you have for somebody that's wanting to go to law school? Where should they focus their efforts? Should they put it toward the LSAT, do you think? Or is it something that you need to have a pretty well-rounded profile to be able to apply?
Be well-rounded, so approach it like you try to get into an Ivy League school or something like that. Participate in everything that you can and everything that you reasonably can that you think are the direction you want to go. Because again, there are so many different types of law that, I just talked to a firearms lawyer recently about Second Amendment issues. And, there were people in my class that were doing biology. There were people doing taxes. There were people doing IP, so tech intellectual property. And there are just so many different ways you can do. So just try to get as well-rounded as you can. And then probably 50% of law school admissions is your LSAT score.
Okay.
So that's what they decide for admission, and that's also the level of support you get as well. So that's actually why I ended up going to George Mason as opposed to some place like Georgetown, because they offered me so much financial aid that I couldn't really turn it down, and it was all based on my LSAT score.